Welcome back. It is Wednesday, August 9th. Jim Coyle with you as always here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Joined now by Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com. Basketball recruiting analyst. Rob, it has been a busy summer all across everything. We've got the college realignment we've been talking about, and yet that has to trickle down and affect recruiting.
Yeah, it does. They saw a kid whose name I cannot remember right now because my brain is fried, decommit from Washington State this week, right after it all happened, and citing we don't know what conference they're going to be in as the reason that he decommitted.
Well, just saw a kid leave USC to go back to Oregon, I think, too.
It's it's a crazy landscape in college sports, and between the transfer portal and between realignment and between the new recruiting calendar where nobody ever gets a day off, it's it's a 365-day-a-year operation. I mean, it always has been, but it seems like it's become more of one in the last 2 or 3 years.
Back in Indiana, they have no commitments for the 24 class. They have had a ton of visits. They've got guys that they're waiting for decisions, a lot of guys that they're waiting on decisions on, and all highly ranked recruits. So I don't think that they're in trouble at all. It's just waiting for these decisions to come out.
They have got, and this is what I like to say about Indiana, they've got irons in the fire, and they've got a lot of them. Now, it has to turn to concrete commitments, and you don't want to finish second and third for 6 guys, but you have to think that they've positioned themselves well for a couple of these guys. I really like their chances with Liam McNeely. Right. I think that they were probably running in second until the coaching change in Texas happened, and I think that really helped them kind of close that gap. They've had,
and then when he went to Montverde, that helped a lot. When he went to Montverde as well,
helped a lot too. They've got kind of a pipeline there with Shafino and Renew and those guys that were there. And I really think he feels comfortable. I don't think that if it wasn't a serious situation, he wouldn't be coming back for a second official visit this year. I was told yesterday too in a text by somebody that would know that Mike Woodson's really working real hard with Boogie Fland right now too. Meaning, I don't like their chances there as much as I like him with McNeely, but I think they're a player. Woodson's going to go speak at the New York High School Coaches Clinic in a couple of weeks, which happens to be at Boogie Fland's high school. I do not think that's a coincidence.
But Calipari and somebody else is going to be there as well.
Oh yeah, there's three heavy hitter coaches there, and I can't remember who the third one is, and they all happen to be recruiting Boogie. It's funny how that works in the recruiting world. I did ask why Dan Hurley wasn't there, and apparently he turned down the invite. So I don't know if that means they don't like their chances there or what happened, but he's not going to be attending.
And the recent drafts of Jalen Hood-Schifino, I'm sure Boogie Fland and players like that see that, Trace Jackson-Davis as well, but especially the guards, they see what Jalen Hood-Schifino was able to do to come in and not be listed as potential one or as a definitive one and done when he came here, but he left as one.
Yeah, they've done a really good job selling that, I think, because, when you talk to one kid and they mention it, that's one thing. But it seems like every guard that you talk to about Indiana always says, nobody thought Jalen Hood-Schifino was a one and done, and Indiana made him one. So I think they've done a really good job kind of putting that on the marquee and pushing that with kids they recruit, and it's sticking because it's the number one thing you hear when you ask kids about Indiana these days is you hear about his process and how he went from off of everybody's draft board to a first round pick.
And they are working. Everybody that's coming in are high ranked recruits. I think they had like 9 visitors that were all in the top, definitely all in the top 100, but mostly in the top 50. These players. So everyone they were recruiting is an elite talent, and they're not going to get them all, but you've got to get somebody. And do they need to get someone to commit to kind of break the seal?
I think that might be a little bit overrated at this point, especially when you're Indiana and you've had some success recruiting in the past year. I don't think anybody's real hesitant with them right now. I think they just happen, when you're wading in deep waters like this, you're going to, it's never going to be easy. If Indiana wanted to go out and recruit the number 110 player in the country, maybe they'd have a commitment right now, but they've decided, whether rightly or wrongly, that they're going to swing with the heavyweights. And when you do that, it can pay off, or you can dump a whole bunch of resources into highly ranked guys and come out empty. And I was told once by Frank Martin when he was the head coach at K-State that the biggest thing about recruiting is being able to admit when you're beaten, and then move on. So Indiana doesn't think they're beaten. They haven't moved on, and we're going to see what the strategy pans out like, because I think it could be a great class. But also, if you spend your time swinging against Kentucky and stuff and losing, then you're scrambling to find your second and third option. So I think the next month or so is going to tell us a lot about what this class is going to look like.
And getting winning the Mackenzie Mbako Award with Kansas, that was also not just a feather in their hat, but I think that showed some recruits that, hey, Indiana is back to being a major player.
Yeah, it shows recruits that. And, it also signals to everybody else that, I think that there are some schools out there that have not adjusted to modern recruiting. And it's showing. And I think, it's so funny that, you look back at right when Mike Woodson got hired, the big thing was, he's a little older. He's never been a college coach. Sure, he can coach, but is he going to be able to recruit, in the modern landscape? But, he's had no problem. So that's not been an issue for them. And I think the Mbako thing kind of shows that, and there's some schools that have kind of been left behind a little bit when it comes to trying to do things the old way, the pre-name, image, and likeness day, the pre-transfer portal days. You get stuck in that, and you can woes me all you want, but the proof is in the pudding, and I think Indiana's adjusted well.
Yeah, and so once they start getting the guys for 24, they're also deep into guys for 25 as well. Of course, you've got guys that are close to home, Jalen Harrelson, Trent Sisley, that they're looking at very heavily. And as far as that, who are some of the other guys, though, for 24 that Indiana, do you think that they're in good position with that are elite talent?
We spoke to those two that I think they're in a really good position with. It's going to be interesting to see what Patrick Ngamba does, the big man from Team Tico over in Virginia. He's got Indiana in his top 8. He hasn't visited yet, but he's got schools in there like Duke, and Duke is going to take a big man this week named Flory Badunga, who you guys probably know pretty well. I think Duke's going to get him, which is kind of going to de facto withdraw them from that recruitment. So Indiana could get involved there. It depends if they want to get him on campus or what, but it's not going to be Duke. They're not going to get both of them. So I'd watch him maybe for something to develop down the road. And then, that's one I definitely keep my eye
on. And then, of course, I still think they're going to find someone. They have an open scholarship right now for the upcoming season. And I still think that they're going to end up finding someone to fill that spot just for a body, if nothing else.
Yeah, there's always late transfers, something, we've still got, anytime you think that the transfer portal is done spinning, some coach goes out and does something stupid, it gets fired like Bob Huggins or something. There's too much time between now and then for something not to happen. It's like the way that modern recruiting goes, something will open up. And it's good, I think, maybe to hold a scholarship back if you are in the position to be able to afford to do that. So you can pounce on one of these late adds to the portal.
There was a story from Trilly Donovan in regards to former Florida and Samford guard Case Glover. He's back in the transfer.
Man, I missed that.
And so he's back in and originally committed to BYU, but decided to reopen his commitment after discrepancies with his NIL package. Yep. So you got him and 3 options listed, and Indiana is listed as one of those.
Well, this is the point I was making earlier. It's so different now, and it's so smart almost to just, if you can afford to do it, to just have a scholarship there late. Because if something happens, you are among very few schools that now have a scholarship that can, swoop in and get a major, a difference maker at this late in the game. And that's not something that you could ever even imagine doing 10 years ago. People were locked up by now. But now it's, the chances are better than good that something is going to happen and somebody is going to be back on the market. And if you allow yourself the wiggle room to get in position late, you can really help yourself.
Yeah, he's a 6-foot point guard, averaged almost 15 points a game last year. So
could you imagine a player like that being available at this time 5 years ago? It's crazy. That's what I'm saying. Mike Woodson has done such a good job, especially when you consider his age and his experience at adapting. A lot of older coaches get knocked for they don't want to adapt to the modern world, and he has been impressive in the way that he's done it. In an adapt or die world, he's chosen to adapt.
And and we're a long way from the season, but this is a season. Last year, we knew what Indiana had. Uh, Not that I don't know who they have, but we don't know what they have right now because they have a lot of new faces. Six new faces right now, which could become seven. So, and the return of Xavier, who didn't play last year, I don't know where they're going to fit in the pantheon of the Big Ten, which I mean I feel confidently it's going to be in the top 3 or 4. We know what Michigan State has. We know what Purdue has. I just don't know where Indiana is going to fall out there.
And I think that's a problem, and not really a problem. That's kind of become the norm in college basketball now. I mean, look at even the rosters of teams like Kansas, look at North Carolina. They've totally redone their rosters, and nobody knows anything anymore. I've always thought that these preseason coaches polls and conferences were a bit of a joke, but even now it's like you don't know how these pieces fit together. You have no idea how they're going to play together. Even if you do a foreign tour, you're still trying to kind of feel out your rotation at that point. So the team doesn't look like it's going to look like when the season starts. So it is. It's all even if you know who you have back. The rest of the teams in the league, a lot of them are crapshoots too. So you really, the sport is more unpredictable than ever, and I think that's probably a good thing from a broad fan perspective. For somebody trying to make sense of it, like you and I, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Everything's a little bit of a coin flip. I don't think you saw that in kind of how the NCAA tournament shook out last year, and the teams that were still standing at the end.
As the season will unfold, and the last 2 seasons, a couple seasons for Indiana have just seen improvement year after year with NCAA tournament play, with player development. This year, you had Trace Jackson Davis not only being drafted, but it was late in the second round, but is one of the few that got a guaranteed contract. You got Jalen Hachifino, of course, who got drafted, which we talked about earlier. But what's more important for recruits to see right now from Indiana, team success or individual player success?
I think it's different strokes for different folks, but I think in talking to players, and I talked to a lot of them, they all obviously think they're first round picks because you don't get to this level unless you have that mentality. So I think individual player success, I really do. I mean, you cannot, and when it comes from a guy like Shafino, it's one thing to get the number 1 player in the country and put him in the draft. That's fine and whatever, but I don't think it makes as much of an impact on these guys as to take a kid like Shafino, who was not thought to be a one and done lottery pick, and make him one. Then you look like you did it. You don't look like you did it if you take LeBron James and LeBron James turns out to be LeBron James. There's another, you don't get, even if there is development there, you don't really get the credit for that. With Shafino and guys like that, you get credit, and then the buzz starts building, and then you can sell it. And they're doing a good job of selling it.
Speaking of LeBron, what do you think is going to happen with USC this year and Bronny James? They are set to be a very, very formidable team, and his status uncertain.
Yeah, I think they're still going to be darn good. I think Isaiah Collier is going to be one of the best players in the country. With the ball in his hands there, he'll really be able to shine. I don't know, with these heart issues, it seems like the timetables are different. I don't know. I mean, you saw Keontae Johnson, who almost died on the court for Florida. You have a major part of Kansas State's Elite 8 run last year. So I don't think it's a nail in the coffin for his career. I don't know that he'll play this year, but they haven't come out and said that he won't. Now, he's obviously not going to be ready to start the season, I don't think. But I don't think it's, unfathomable that he'll play late in the year.